The No Fate channel checking in with another episode of Dad's Diet. It is summertime, it is prime grilling time, and on this episode I'm going to show you how to get out there, grill up some delicious steak, but avoid a lot of unnecessary fat. Typically, I'm never one to tell folks to avoid fat in their diet. In fact, I think healthy fats are a great way to keep you full longer and avoid having to eat or snack on crappy carbohydrates. However, when you dads go to the grocery store to pick up steaks for the grill, you are picking up the fattiest and most expensive cuts of meat: Porterhouse, T-bone, ribeye. The reason you're doing this is because they are simply super easy to cook. You sprinkle on a little salt and pepper, you throw them on the grill with high heat, and it's a no-brainer. They come off delicious. That fat that's surrounded the meat and marbled into the meat simply melts in, and I agree that those steaks come off tasting delicious. However, those steaks are so full of fat, unless you are on the carnivore diet, an Atkins diet, or a ketogenic diet, it's simply way too much, and it's probably the reason that you guys have that dad bod that you just don't want to have. With just a little bit of effort, you dads can still go out there, grill up some delicious steaks, but avoid a ton of that unnecessary fat. And the way to do this is to simply go out to the grocery store and find lean cuts of steak. That means no marbling. So that's top round or top sirloin steaks. Now, oftentimes, and one of the benefits of this is that those steaks are a hell of a lot cheaper than your ribeyes or your porterhouses. So not only are you going to be saving a lot of fat from your diet, you are going to be saving a lot of money in your pocket. The reason these steaks are cheaper is because if you don't marinate them, season them, and cook them properly, they can easily come off the grill cheap, tough, and chewy. I'm going to show you a marinade that I use to get my steaks delicious, and I'm also going to go over a number of key grilling tips that are going to help you deliver a delicious piece of steak to yourself and your family. Before we dive in to the meat selection and the marinade, I want to go over a couple grilling tips that are going to help you deliver a fantastic steak to you and your family, regardless of the steak that you choose or the toppings and marinades that you use. Number one is you want a clean grill. I did a whole video on how to clean and upgrade your grill. I'll link that up above right now and in the comments below. But just get out there, make sure your grill is clean, and help prevent flare-ups. Secondly, you want to cook steak on a high heat. So you definitely should run your grill for 5 or 10 minutes at high before you even put your steak on. A simple but effective way of determining how well your steak is cooked is the thumb test. Now, it's pretty simple. It works for me. It's not 100% accurate, but it's better than having to cut into your steak to find out. And that is, you take your thumb, you put it lightly to your index finger, okay? This feeling right here is how the meat would feel if it was rare or medium rare. You move it to the index finger, and that is going to be medium, and that's medium well. And when you move it to your pinky finger, that feeling right here, see how that's nice and tough? That finger that feeling right there is going to be well done. So when you're out on the grill, you take your tongs, you touch the steak. If it feels like that, you know it's well done. Medium well, medium rare, okay? Keep in mind, when you take the steak off that grill, it is going to continue to cook. Because it has the heat internally in it, it's going to continue to cook and continue to get more well done. So if you take the steak off the grill at medium, by the time you serve it and eat it, it's going to be closer, not fully, but closer to medium well. Also, another trick to making sure that your steak has as much juice and flavor in it as possible. When you take the steak off the grill, you want to let it sit, or what's known as rest, for 3 to 5 minutes before you serve it. That's going to allow the steak to reabsorb a lot of the juices that are on the surface of the steak. And when someone cuts into it, it's going to be a lot more moist than if you just take it off the grill and put it on someone's plate. So again, that's 3 to 5 minutes. So let's dive into the steak. Here we have a beef chuck filet roast. Normally, this is a very tough piece of steak. Normally, this is something that you would put in a roast to tenderize it. Well, we don't do normal. We are looking to get great steak at cheap prices. This was $4.89 a pound, and low fat. This comes in at only 6 grams of fat per serving. Keep in mind, a Porterhouse steak is more like 22 grams per fat per serving. So huge differential between the fattiest steaks and this steak. Now, because this is normally a tough steak, we want to cut it thick. By cutting the pieces thicker, we're going to allow this steak to maintain more of its moisture during the cooking process, and it's going to allow us to not screw it up. If you have a very thin piece of steak and you put it on high heat on the grill, you have to be very careful. It will cook and overcook very quickly. So we're going to purposely cut these pieces thick. Normally, we would take this steak and cut off any superfluous fat that was on it, because again, we're going to get plenty of fat inside the steak, and we don't need any extra fat. So if there was external fat on this steak, we would just take care of it and remove it ahead of time. So again, we're cutting these pieces thick. That's about 1 inch to 1.25 inches. Now this piece is going to be a difficult one to actually cook, so we'll probably cook it on the underside of cooking it. Cook it more towards the medium or medium rare side, just because it's thin and oddly shaped. Now a different piece of steak. This is beef chuck London broil shoulder steak. Now a different piece of steak. This is a broil shoulder steak. Again, another what's considered a tough portion of steak. This comes in at $3.79 a pound, so very inexpensive, and only 6 grams of fat per serving. Again, we're looking for low fat per serving, but we're going to, even though it's normally considered a tough piece of steak, we are going to fix that by marinating it. Now, as I mentioned before, we want to clear any of the external fat. We're looking to reduce the fat, reduce the unnecessary calories. Again, we're going to add flavor back in, so don't worry about that. Make sure you don't cut yourself when you're doing this, because that would be a mess. Trust me when I tell you this process normally goes a little bit faster if you are not filming it. So even though this may seem like a convoluted way or a convoluted marinade, once you've done it once or twice, you're going to fly through this process. Now that we're done cutting the steak, we're going to add some rub. This is Montery steak seasoning. It tastes delicious. What you're going to do, now I never measured this out, I just eyeball it, is you are going to add the seasoning to the steak, and then you are going to push it in with your hand. Okay, so you want to get a fair amount, push it in with your hand, and then flip each piece so you get both sides. And again, push it in with your hand. Don't be afraid to get dirty. Next up is extra virgin olive oil. Don't even know if you can see that. Extra virgin olive oil is next on the list. Now, you don't need much. We're purposely trying to keep this relatively healthy and reduce some of the fat intake. So a little goes a long way. I would probably say eyeball, a teaspoon or two. That's probably more than I needed, but okay, same thing. You want to rub that in, flip these over, spread it around. Next up, balsamic vinegar. Now this is going to have carbohydrates in it, so be careful if you are on an Atkins diet or a super low carb diet. You don't want to use this, but it tastes delicious. So I would say be a little bit more gentle, a little bit more generous than you were with the olive oil. But again, put it in, rub it around. Last but not least, garlic. I'm Italian. You put garlic on everything. It is extremely healthy for you, and it is also delicious. I usually put about 2 tablespoons, throw it in, and then again, repeat the process. Rub it around. Now I will put this in the refrigerator and cover it with saran wrap and let it sit for a day. If you don't have that time, you can just let it sit in the refrigerator for a couple of hours. It doesn't have to be overnight. Obviously, if you have the time, Overnight is preferred. Let's get on to this piece. The grill is nice and hot. That is an excellent way to sterilize the grill. It's been on for 10 minutes. I had it on super high. I'm now going to turn the temperature down in between high and medium, and that allows my steaks not to completely burn when I turn my back on them. So let's throw these steaks on. Now we're going to save this marinade. Normally most people would throw it out. We're going to save it, and when we flip the steaks, we're going to take that spoon right there and just continue to apply the marinade to the top of the steaks. And again, the purpose of that is to get as much moisture and juice in those steaks as possible, and make it that much better when they come off the grill. I showed you the seasoning and marinade that I use, but I know there are a ton of other great rubs, seasonings, and marinades out there. If you have one that you love, simply leave it in the comments below. I'd love to check it out. If you've come this far in the video, then definitely give it a like, hit that subscribe button. As usual, thanks for watching, and don't save anything for the trip back. The No Fate channel is dedicated to providing you with ideas on how to improve your community. Your community at home, your community in your neighborhood, and your community in your town. I'll also be giving you insight into this dad's tricks, trips, and tribulations.